Hey everyone, welcome in. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. While we're waiting on everyone to join, please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. I'm Leah. I'm joining you from Portland, Oregon, and it's just starting to feel like fall. So I'm really excited about that. Autumn's my favorite season. Oh, and because this webinar features Whoop, the wearable fitness tracker, let us know in the chat what your favorite fall fitness activity is. Mine would have to be hiking. Once the leaves start changing here, it's so beautiful. So I'm going to be doing a lot of hiking in the Pacific Northwest this fall. And then I also love dancing at music shows. I don't know if that counts, but if I was wearing a Whoop fitness tracker, I think that there'd be some pretty good cardio stats depending on the show, right? Hey, if you're just joining us, please let us know in the chat what your favorite fall fitness activity is. Let us know. Alrighty. So my name is Leah Hudson. I'm a senior campaign specialist here at DBT Labs, and I'm really excited for today's virtual event, Peak Data Performance, Whoop's move from DBT Core to DBT Cloud. Let's get into it. There we go. Housekeeping. So Q&A, please use the Q&A tab for all of your questions. That way we can make sure we answer all of them. We also have a normal chat section. So use that for normal banter, talk about what you like about the presentation. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And then recording, we will send out the recording within 24 hours after the event, along with some follow-up resources. So check your email inbox for that. And then a survey. I'll send a survey out towards the last little bit of the event. We'd really appreciate your thoughts. So please take that survey and let us know how we can improve these events for you in the future. Alrighty, today's agenda, we're going to talk about Coalesce, the Analytics Engineering Conference. Then we are going to meet our presenters, who will segue into a fireside chat. And then we're going to move into a DBT Cloud demo, so make sure you stay tuned for the demo. And then we've got some next steps for you on your DBT Cloud journey. Alrighty, so Coalesce. Coalesce is the Analytics Engineering Conference. It's crafted by DBT Labs, and it's coming up in October. You can join us in person in Las Vegas, or you can join us for Coalesce online, which is totally free. We've got a killer speaker lineup. We have networking opportunities, different types of workshops. So please register for Coalesce. There's a link in the doc section of Goldcast, and then I'll also post a link in the chat to register. It takes like 2 seconds to register for Coalesce online. So I hope that y'all can join us for that. Alrighty, I'm going to pass things over to our presenters, Sarah and Matt, so we can get started for real. Alrighty, take it away, Sarah and Matt.
All right. Thanks, Leah. Really excited to be here today and facilitate this conversation with Matt from Whoop and have a discussion around their journey from DBT Core to DBT Cloud. So I figured we'd kick things off with some introductions. My name's Sarah Galinsky. I'm a technical product marketing manager here at DBT Labs. Again, really excited to be here today with Matt. And I'll kick things over to you to introduce yourself as you're the star of the show today.
Thanks, Sarah. Excited to be here with you all today. My name is Matt. I'm the director of analytics at Whoop and been with the company for 3 years, leading all things data analytics and analytics engineering and business data science. So really excited to take the opportunity to talk to everybody about our transition last year from DBT Core to DBT Cloud.
Awesome. I guess to kind of like start the conversation, you work at Whoop company, and the product is definitely all about data. Can you tell me a little bit more about, what data is used and how your team supports the business?
Yeah, for sure. So Whoop is the human performance company, and our mission is to leverage data to unlock human performance using all internal algorithms that we've developed, leveraging biometric data and algorithms around sleep, recovery, and strain. The company's been around for 12 years, founded out of Harvard and based in Boston to this day. And everything that we do is really founded in data. So it's really cool to have the opportunity to lead the analytics team here at Whoop. So the role that my team plays in the broader picture is really to just partner with all different facets of the organization, from marketing and product and growth, and basically you name the team, we're partnering with them to leverage data to be more data driven. So whether that means we're helping them run experiments on new ways to think about going to market, or understanding the incrementality from media spend, to really diving into user data to understand product performance. That's all something that falls under the scope of my team here at Whoop.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that context. So I guess in terms of, topic of DBT, what was the driving force for adopting DBT core at Whoop? Was there a specific project or team that kind of led that charge?
Yeah, so when I first started at Whoop, like I mentioned a little over 3 years ago, we didn't have DBT or any central data orchestration or transformation tool. We were just using SQL scripts that we had a data engineer running through some ad hoc kind of process every day that would run. And there were very little visibility for the analysts, and we didn't have any sort of success metrics for what it meant to get data into production every day. So back then we were running on Amazon Redshift, and one of the things that we wanted to really do was just kind of create that centralized layer for orchestration and transformation. So we brought in DBT Core at that point just as a free solution, as an easy way to get off the ground. Obviously, everyone on the team was SQL literate, and with that being the key language for DBT to operate on, it was a pretty easy adoption, and got to the point where we had all of our transformations taking place in DBT Core as opposed to this other solution we had prior.
Awesome. And sounds like, kind of probably started within your team, like folks were using DBT. How was that project structured? And then how did that kind of change as you brought in more teams to kind of work out a DBT for those transformations?
Yeah, so it was specifically within my team, so
Yeah.
analytics, when we first brought
Okay.
in DBT Core. And the way we first went about it didn't really have much structure to it, which was, I think, one of the huge learning experiences that we had. There was no overarching strategy that we implemented, which kind of was the impetus for why we chose DBT. And I think there were definitely a lot of learnings there around how we could have structured that project better. When we can touch on that later when we talk about the DBT2 project that we kicked off here at Whoop. But I think for the most part, it was implemented in a way that got us off the ground with DBT, but there was no central governance. And what that meant was two different analysts could be creating more or less the same DBT model to transform the same data. And it didn't alleviate any of our problems around a single source of truth or all the other great things that customers will be implementing DBT for. So a lot of learnings from that first go around with regards to how much structure and governance we implemented.
No, absolutely. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question, which was, what was the driving force to move to DBT Cloud? Was it, hey, we see these new features that are coming out that we really want to get hands-on with? Or was it something about yeah, what were your
Yeah,
motivations to kind of move to DBT Cloud? And
for
how did you
sure.
evaluate that decision?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us was really just around the cloud scheduler. And I know that seems like such a trivial feature for DBT Cloud since you guys have expanded so much since we first moved to DBT Cloud. But for us, it was really just having the ability for analysts and myself and people on the team who were less technical with tools like Prefect, which we had been previously using to orchestrate our daily run. And when something failed when we were on DBT Core, there was less visibility into what went wrong. We didn't know necessarily which model was causing us issues. We didn't have great visibility into which downstream models were skipped or also didn't run as a result of the failure. So by moving our instance from core to cloud, we got a lot more visibility into just what was going on. And around the same time, we also had more use cases popping up across the organization outside of analytics. And I think this was definitely before DBT Mesh was a thing, but just in speaking with the teams over at DBT, we kind of knew there was going to be some upcoming solutions around cross projects where you can have shared resources and all within one giant project. So we made the leap over to DBT Cloud around them.
Awesome. And then I think we kind of hinted at it earlier, but then, what was that impact on how you approached governance and project structure, once DBT Mesh was, available for use for your teams?
Yeah, I think that's right around the time where we were switching to Snowflake. And when we switched to Snowflake, we really wanted to make sure that all the data that we were bringing in was clean and, it made sense. It was well governed and there was a strategy around it, as opposed to just lifting and shifting our Redshift database. And what that meant for us was we probably needed to start from scratch with DBT just because there was a lot of tech debt. And it got to the point where I had to make a decision. Do we want to try to clean up what we have while it's still in flight, or do we want to table what we have for now, let it keep running until we have a new repository and a brand new project up and running. So that DBT2 project that I hinted at a few minutes ago is what I'm talking about now. And what we ultimately decided to do was start a brand new DBT project from scratch within the analytics team and really think about it from first principles and almost coming at it backwards. So what we did is we sat down as an analytics team, and there were probably around 12 of us at the time, so large enough to kind of divide and conquer the work, but not so big that we didn't really have a sense of what was going on across the company. And what we did was we identified all of the metrics that we wanted to be able to track as a company and worked backwards because that would allow us to really think critically around what is the granularity that we want these metrics and these tables to be at, and kind of create the DAGs in reverse to build up to those blocks. And I think why that worked well for us was because it really ensured that we had all the data that we needed, but it also ensured that we only had one source of truth as opposed to two tables for sales or something like that. So that was definitely a big kind of strategic shift for us because we were really being deliberate about what we were actually bringing into DBT while we switched over to Snowflake to ensure that we had clean database structure and all of our clean reporting tables.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also sounds like it was great to kind of get a lot of folks involved earlier in the process as well. So, no data sets were like left out. Um, how else did you kind of collaborate with the other teams throughout the migration process? And do you have any like words of wisdom for folks that might be kind of like looking to also make the move, that, work with other teams within their companies to kind of make it as seamless and easy as possible?
Yeah. So as we started to see success with this project, I think it also, you know, caught some attention throughout the company with other data teams, namely like our data science team and our data engineering team, who sits separate to my organization, but we also collaborate with them occasionally. And there's a lot of shared data sources across the company. So just that concept now of breaking down data silos and getting everything into one query platform. So for us, that's Snowflake. Now, how do we share the same resources and understand what those data assets are? So for us, we didn't have a solution for that company wide. And DBT, I feel like, at least in my mind, historically had always been for analytics teams and really data analysts. But as our data science and data engineers started to see what the power of DBT was just by having everything's defined in SQL or Python models, if you're more inclined that way, you can also bring those workloads to the same platform, and everyone can maintain their own repositories. So everyone's under independent version control and has their own review processes and all of that. And we started to create more projects in dbt cloud. So each team now has their own dbt project, and within analytics we actually have two or three now, just depending on the different workloads. And what we've done is identified a core set of data assets, whether that's DBT models for tables that are used company-wide or macros that are handy, stuff like that. And we've ported them over to a Whoop Commons DBT project. And that's something that's widely accessible through all DBT projects, leveraging the DBT mesh that we get with our cloud license. So that's a way that we don't have to create really, I guess, workarounds is what they would be in DBT core to import other models from different projects. Right now, it's just all native within the cloud platform, and it's really transparent in terms of what you see from the Explore page in DBT Cloud and gives us a lot of visibility into where things are being used and how they're being used.
No, absolutely. And this kind of, I guess I'm curious to know more about, you said that it used to kind of be a lot of like, analytics engineers that were working within DBT. Then kind of data analysts became really interested in it. How do you see them kind of like working within DBT Cloud? Is it mostly through Explore? Are they, now able to kind of like develop through the IDE? Kind of what are you seeing, and what kind of feedback did you get from them along the way? to kind of help enable them to be successful in the platform?
Yeah, great question. And up until I think like 1 year ago this week, we didn't have any analytics engineers. So it was just myself and a team of data analysts who I'd say I'm very fortunate that this team of individuals is very skilled, both as data analysts and technical, like probably could be analytics engineers some places. And what that has done for us is allowed us to kind of maintain a good level of structure within our DBT models, but also allowed us to go pretty deep into DBT core. And for me, one of the big decisions around switching from DBT core to DBT cloud was what do we do with all this infrastructure that we've built on core? And we built out like local testing and CI/CD processes and production and development and testing environments. And we didn't want to necessarily lose all this work or have to migrate it over to DBT Cloud using some of the native work there. So I think one of the really great things about DBT Cloud for us is that they're both compatible with one another. You don't need to migrate everything over to DBT Cloud. So we could bring new workloads onto DBT Cloud, but we didn't have to do the backporting of existing DBT core work into DBT Cloud. So analysts that were really comfortable with DBT core already and were comfortable running stuff locally in the command line and running tests locally, they could still continue to do so. But when we expand the team and bring in analysts that don't have that level of experience, they can develop natively within DBT Cloud, which just really unlocks the number of use cases that we can attack and the amount of value that we're getting from the platform. So now that we have an analytics engineer on the team, he's responsible for coordinating all of our releases and making sure that everything's tested and our overall CI/CD pipelines. But in general, I think what we've been able to do is retrofit really all the solutions that we're looking for into either DBT Core or DBT Cloud, and it all just fits really well into our use cases.
Oh, it's awesome to hear. And I think you kind of hit on talking about like release cadence and things like that. Can you speak to, I guess just in general, like how DBT or DBT Cloud has kind of impacted like the processes that you have in place at Whoop, for your team, across teams to kind of bring in that visibility into, hey, what's happening, what changes were made, what models were updated, things like that.
Yeah, totally. So like I was mentioning earlier, when we were running our first instance of DBT Core in our like legacy code, all of that was pretty much anybody can make a change and merge it into production, and there it's in your production database and it just runs. And that's really great for time to value, but it's not so great for governance and visibility into what changes were actually being made. So shortly after finishing up our DBT2 project, one of the things that I really wanted to do is be very deliberate about what code changes were being pushed to production. And the same way that, our software teams don't push code to production on Fridays because then somebody has to check in on the weekends if something breaks. I wanted to make sure that we weren't just pushing stuff to production without really, really understanding what the impacts are. So this is when we implemented a weekly release cadence for our analytics code base. So once we finished all the foundational work, of course, there's going to be ongoing changes, whether it's we need to update logic or insert columns or even create new models as the business evolves. What we didn't want to do was just quickly push things out that could break production reporting or change numbers that people are making decisions on. And like we were talking about at the beginning, Whoop's a very data-driven organization, and pretty much all decisions that get made here are founded in data in some way or another. So we can't have people misinformed. And that's one of the biggest aspects of my job is being able to feel really confident that the data that we're producing is as accurate as possible. So with this weekly release cadence, we fork our DBT code off of our production branch every Friday. And that's where people can start making changes and pushing to the QA branch. And then the QA branch just accumulates all the changes that we want to make in that week. And then our analytics engineer who quarterbacks our weekly release cadence will compile all of these into a single release, get code owner review, and make sure that no metrics are changing. So we have unit tests that run to ensure that metrics that shouldn't be changing aren't changing, and to make sure that our changes that we've tried to make are actually doing what they were intended to. And then we push once a week to production with all of this code. And the way that we make this known to the organization is by weekly release notes. So we have a Slack channel where we compile all the changes, whether that's metrics that are going to be changing as a result of code changes or new tables, removed tables, so on and so forth. And we provide that level of visibility to the organization, which is great because it holds us accountable, but it also gives visibility to the organization. And really all this is just possible because of the DBT ecosystem and kind of providing that level of developer framework for the analysts.
Awesome. And cool to hear how y'all are using unit tests there on a weekly basis. So it's a nifty feature. I guess, talk about how, data accuracy is important, making sure that metrics aren't changing is really critical. How are you kind of like measuring all of these things, or like measuring the success of DBT Cloud across your data and your processes?
I think it really just goes back to that weekly release. And if we're confident that what we're pushing out is what we intended to push out, then we're really doing a good job. And of course, data is messy at times, and that's not always at fault of the analysts or the analytics engineers or data engineers. Sometimes upstream data changes, and that's just going to happen, and you can't change that. However, what I wanted to do for success for my team was say anything that we can control, we're going to control. And with that, we're going to really, really keep an eye on accuracy and data integrity. So since we've switched to the weekly release cadence, we've actually reduced the number of accidental errors in production code, I'd say essentially to zero. And that's been over a 6-month time frame now. So it just means we're doing a really good job of being deliberate about testing code before pushing it, as well as reviewing it and sending it out. So for me, that's a huge testament to the team and all the effort that we're putting in and the culture that we've instilled here at Whoop around data integrity and data governance. So really, really proud to talk about the fact that we just don't push bad code out, and it makes me sleep better at night knowing that the business isn't going to make misinformed decisions based on the data that we're producing.
No, it's fantastic to hear. And I heard you mention 6 months. Is that kind of like the time frame that it took y'all to kind of make the migration from DBT Core to DBT Cloud? Or I guess can you tell me like how long that took your team?
Yeah, so that 6 months was specifically how long we've been switched to the weekly release
Okay.
cadence. That was around March of this year. I'd say the migration from DBT Core to DBT Cloud, which included a full instance rebuild, that probably took 4 or 5 months, and that was not people that were stopping their day jobs to do this. That was just people who were carving time out of their day to work on this cutover and this migration. So it probably would have been significantly less if we actually dedicated resources to it full time.
Nice. Okay. I guess, yeah, follow-up question. I mean, just like question for me would be like, what's next? Is there anything that you're looking to like build off of, or any features you're looking to pull into, your workflows? Like what has the team over at Whoop excited about using DBT Cloud in the future?
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be a data conversation in 2024 without talking about AI. And obviously, that's like a big initiative for us as we think to the future and some of these more natural language use cases in terms of people being able to query data without knowing SQL or any type of coding language. So, again, one of the big things that we implemented with our DBT instance the second time around was YAML files that actually describe every single table down to the column level. And it basically created this data catalog for us where every single production model in DBT, we have every single column and every single table documented. So now as we think to the future, this plays really well into the DBT semantic layer, which is something that we're currently evaluating as a potential solution for us, because I just foresee that being a huge player in the world of AI and natural language chatbots, for example, in terms of how we communicate with our data. Because if we can have the semantics of these models built out really thoroughly and accurately in a way that a machine can understand them, it's only a matter of time before we can have conversations with this level of data. So by having all of the metadata in DBT in a way that's very discoverable and very well laid out in a consistent manner, I think it sets us up for a world where that's a possibility in the very near future. So that in terms of DBT core functionality, the semantic layer is definitely on our roadmap to evaluate more realistically.
Yeah, awesome. Great to hear. Cool. I think those are kind of the questions that I had. Anything else you want to kind of like speak to for the audience?
No, I think it's just a recap. It's been a really great journey to switch over from DBT Core to DBT Cloud over the past year, and just kind of working with you guys on the partnership and seeing the development of new features over the past several months, as well as getting a glimpse into what's to come is really exciting. So really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you. It's great work. It's been great to work with you and talk to you and learn all about how Whoop is using DBT over in your analytics teams. It's a really cool use case, honestly. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And I think I'll have to pass it back over to Leah while I get set up for the demo. So thanks for tuning in, y'all, and keep watching for the demo. Right.
Hey everyone, I'm back. Thanks, Sarah and Matt. Wow, that was really fantastic learning about what Whoop's team of data analysts are currently doing with DBT Cloud. Alrighty, please continue to ask more questions in the chat. We are more than happy to answer those for you. You can also click the orange Talk to an Expert button at the top of Goldcast to meet with a DBT specialist about your specific use case and get your questions answered that way. And with that, I'm going to pass things back over to Sarah for her DBT Cloud demo. All right, Sarah, let's rock and roll.
Hey everyone, I'm back and excited to walk through this demo of DBT Cloud with you all. Before we get hands-on with the platform, I thought I would share a quick overview slide that kind of highlights the extensive capabilities of DBT Cloud. So again, what is DBT Cloud? It's really a central metadata control plane that leverages the DBT transformation framework under the hood and kind of builds features around these 6 themes. So design, discover, align, build, deploy, and observe to really enable teams to build high quality data products faster. There's also built-in governance, automation, and collaboration features that can help you do this as well. So to kind of go through each theme, first we have design, or DBT Mesh. So DBT Mesh is a new architecture that distributes large projects into more manageable data domains. This really allows teams to focus on data pipelines that are relevant to their domains. So say you have marketing, sales, and finance teams, right? They can each work out of their own project, and this gives them full ownership of their business logic. Next, we have Discover, or DBT Explorer. And DBT Explorer is the knowledge base for documentation and lineage visualization in DBT Cloud. We'll spend quite a bit of time in Explorer, and I'll show you how to discover and reuse your data and understand the relationship between those resources. And then for Align, we have the DBT semantic layer. So the semantic layer in DBT Cloud allows you to define and deliver consistent metrics for your workflows. This means you can define a metric like customer or revenue, and when you use them in downstream BI and analytics tools, you know they're working from the same data. Next is build. So this is all things developer experience, right? Giving you the flexibility to build kind of how you want. So if you're comfortable with the command line, we have the Cloud CLI, but we also have the web-based IDE, and that's what we're going to work out of today for the demo. We did recently announce a visual editor, which is now in private beta, and this is more of a drag and drop interface to kind of build these transformation workflows, which is great for folks that aren't, really comfortable writing SQL code, right? But they still want to kind of build their own transformations. Then for deploy, we have the scheduler and CI. So DBT Cloud has a built-in scheduler and continuous integration powered by Git, and these both allow you to kind of build and test in isolation, as well as automate when and where jobs are run. Then we have Observe, so this is tests and alerts. So DBT does have like a built-in testing framework, right? You can also set up alerts. So say, a build fail or a deployment fails, right? You can kind of have that automated to set up an alert to Slack or PagerDuty to notify someone, and then they can kind of dig into it and troubleshoot that. There's also, a lot of logs available all over the UI. So you can really get a lot of information on your models, on your builds, on your deployments, and this really helps you enforce data quality and easily kind of troubleshoot and debug issues pretty quickly. So with that, let's jump into DBT Cloud for this demo. So as I navigate through DBT Cloud, it's really broken into 4 main sections. You have this dashboard that you see here, and then develop. So again, giving you the options for the CLI, the IDE, or the visual editor. Deploy, This is, kind of where you handle your environments, you manage all your jobs. You can kind of get information there. And then you have Explore. So I'm going to start off by going into DBT Explorer. Here you can get an overview of your project, see what resources are being used, check out the file tree to see how the project is set up in your repository, and you can also see your database connections. So right now this is connected to Snowflake. Some other interesting project level insights are around performance and recommendations, but we'll come back to those at the end. I'm working out of this data analytics project, right? You can see this here, but if we click into our account, we can see the full list of projects available. I know my analytics project also has some downstream projects that leverage some of the same models, and we can do this with DBT Mesh. So we can kind of click into the lineage and see those 3 projects pulled up right here. So going back to DBT Explorer, DBT Explorer leverages your project's metadata to display details like resources, so models, tests, metrics, their lineage, and model consumption to give you a better understanding of the latest production state. So what's great about Explorer is you can easily discover data assets and understand what's happening within your workflow without having to dig too much into the code, which makes it really easy to collaborate with other data developers, analysts, and consumers. So going into the lineage for the project, here is the DAG for our entire project. This is how you can see all the resources and how they're used throughout your workflow in your project. So on the left, we have all of our raw source data. We have the DBT models that we've built off of that. And then you can see how they're used downstream in other projects, how they're tied to other metrics and exposures. So exposures are something outside of DBT like a dashboard or a notebook or some type of reporting tool. So for this demo, we are going to build out some new transformations with our customers model. Here we have, we can go to the actual page in Explorer specific to this model, and that contains a lot of information. So first, you can see that the latest status for both the job, run, and test were successful, which is always great to see those green check marks. There's also a DAG that shows you the upstream and downstream dependencies for the selected resources. So you can use the lineage lenses to get different views of the DAG. You can see, the different resource types, the latest status. So, everything here was successful. You can also look at the test status as well as the number of queries against the model. So this is also a customizable view. So let's look at the other info on the model page. You can pull up the code, right? So you could see both the source code, so what we're writing when we're building this, as well as the compiled code. And that's what dbt Cloud actually creates and sends to your data warehouse when it builds. We also have column of lineage. This is relatively new. And this enables you to see what columns that the model actually uses, right? So here we see this is a primary key. We have an actual DAG for the columns themselves, right? So you can kind of see how you're using your columns throughout your workflow. You can also find more info on model performance. So pulling this up, you can look at the build time, build count, test results, and recent queries specific to this model. There's also a lot of other general metadata that shows up here, right? Like unique ID, right? All of this, this long laundry list of metadata. And then at the bottom of the page, you also have a list of the dependencies, both upstream and downstream. So that is the Explorer page for our DIM customers model. So now that we have a good understanding of what this customer model includes, we know that it's passed tests, it's up to date. I know I feel comfortable building out a new use case that depends on this model, right? So now we can jump into the Cloud IDE and get developing. So this is the integrated development environment in DBT Cloud, right? So you'll do all your building, testing, running, version controlling of your DBT projects right here. I'll give you a little tour. I have my account connected to GitHub. Target repository is, SA standard shared demo here. And you can also see we have set up this repo in File Explorer, and then I'm working out of my own branch. So let's start by creating a new file. So demo cloud. And the benefits of developing your transformation kind of remain the same in DBT Cloud as it is in DBT Core, right? So different experience, but I still really get to focus on the business logic and tell DBT how I want to build this model without having to write all the DDL and DML myself. So this means that as I'm building out this transformation logic, I'm really focusing on my select statements, right? So select star, and then use that ref function to take advantage of all the upstream logic in our DIM customers model instead of recreating it myself and adding duplicate logic to our workflow. So we can save that. Now you can see we have an updated version of our lineage, right? Not only do we have the dim customers model, but this new demo model, and that is due to the ref function that we used. And while we're on the topic of like the reference function, I really wanted to pop over to our marketing project really quick. So again, this marketing project downstream relies on some of the models that are in this core like analytics project. And I'll show you how to, you can collaborate across these projects with cross-project ref. So here you can see in this specific file, right, you're calling to the specific analytics, the customers model within analytics. And this really is one of the most like powerful aspects of DBT Mesh, right? You can see this model referencing the customers model in the analytics project. So again, when you're talking about like collaborating with different teams across different domains, DBT Mesh can really enable you to do that pretty easily. Reusing models, reusing macros, all possible with DBT Mesh. Awesome. So going back to our main analytics project. All right. So we have this select statement and it's honestly not doing much, right? We're just kind of calling the same data. And for our use case, we wanted to segment for a specific geo. I can use preview to see what data I can actually pull from. And yeah, based on this info, it looks like there is a region column. And now that I know how we define our regions, I can use the where function and specify America. So just to make sure that I haven't done anything wrong, I can, save and preview it again, and I should see only the data for that region. And it worked. So we don't see an error from the warehouse where we push that SQL down to, which means we can move forward. So now that we've validated this in terms of my SQL running and working, I can check that it will build as expected. So I can go in here, you see all the different DBT commands, and I can click DBT build. And what that does is it invokes DBT build to build an asset in our warehouse. So I can sit here and wait for it to pass successfully, and then we can go into this command and see all the steps used to stand this up. So going into the logs for the demo model, yeah, and here we can see the actual SQL that ran to build the asset. So now that we've successfully built this new model in DBT Cloud, and if this is something we want to bring into our production environment, I know that I will have to add, documentation and tests to it because it's best practices for my organization. So DBT Core supports DBT docs, data tests, and as of version 1.8, unit tests. DBT Cloud also supports these, but again, Explorer is our main documentation hub, so you get much more information at your fingertips in Explorer than you would simply using, DBT docs. One of the more recent features in DBT Cloud is DBT Assist, and you can see that here. So what DBT Assist does is it really automates the creation of tests and documentation. So for this example, I will say create tests, and it'll spin up this new YAML file, use an LLM to write these tests for me. So here it is, writing it. And it's worth noting that it's picked up on like my primary key and set the unique test for it without me having to kind of tell it to do that. So let's save this file and just run the tests to make sure they all pass. And they do, okay. And we can go back and just, rebuild the demo cloud model just so I can show you what it looks like. So, the build passes, and then you see it's also picked up all of the tests that we've just created. So now that we have built out this model and tested it in my dev environment, how do I get that into production? I can commit and sync these changes, so that pushes it to our remote repository. And now I can create a pull request against it, all from the IDE. So this will bring me to GitHub, and I can check that these are the changes that I want to make before proceeding with that pull request. Okay, pull request done. And you can see that there are reviewers in place that make sure this has gone through and passed this define checklist before, getting merged into a main branch. So now that I've started the process, it kicks off this these built-in CI checks. Here are the different stages that it goes through in the process, and one of these is actually a DBT Cloud job to validate the changes in our PR. So watch it go through the CI checks here, and if we go into details of that DBT Cloud job, it'll actually pull us back into DBT Cloud where we can see more of the details for that run. So this includes each step of the run and associated logs. You'll see here that one of the steps is an invocation of dbt build, which you might recall from the work we just did in the IDE. There's also this select flag with this state parameter. So here it's comparing changes of the pull request to what's currently running in production, so that it only runs the impacted models. So instead of running the entire pipeline, it's only a small subset. Something else, while this is kind of running, I wanted to kind of talk about efficiency when it comes to dbt Cloud. So this right here does enable us to be, much more efficient in terms with both our time and our warehouse resources, right? And then something else I didn't really highlight when developing is there's the option to kind of defer to production. So that's something very similar when you're building, within the IDE and you have defer to production on. It'll kind of it won't rebuild the entire model from like all the way, upstream, right? It'll just kind of rebuild with the latest data that you have running in production. So that way you don't have to rebuild your model over and over and over again from end to end. It'll just use the, kind of most recent state in production. So again, saving you time and compute resources, which is always great. So now that this has been successful, we can kind of go through the different tabs up here, right? Check out the lineage, model timing. But what I really wanted to highlight was this compare tab. So this can help developers answer the question, hey, will this, pull request really build the right changes in production? What is the impact of these changes to, my data sets, right? Here you can kind of see it picked up this past change to my customer tiers. That was from like an old unit test. So here you can see the impact that it has on the data sets, as well as the different, changes to the code. You can see that all right here. So this really helps you just understand like what's changing within your production like environment if you go through like a pull request. So far in this demo, I've shown you how to discover data, visualize the lineage of your data workflows. We've built, tested, and deployed a new model with some engineering best practices. So let's dig into some additional features that can really make dbt production ready. So dbt jobs leverage, again, built-in scheduling capabilities that help you automate, how, when, and where you execute dbt. So if we go to kind of the jobs page, here you can see a list of like the jobs that we have set up for this specific project. And if you go to like add a new job, you can see there's 3 different types, right? So you have deploy jobs, which this is just to create and set up triggers for building production data assets. You have CI jobs, so this is what we just did. And this allows you to create and set up triggers for checking code changes. And then you have merge jobs. So this helps you like create and set up triggers for merged pull requests. And then let's take a look at our nightly production refresh job just to kind of see what that looks like and how we set it up. Here you'll see, the recent runs, they've all been successful. You can see a list of all the previous runs, right? They've all been successful, which is great to see. And you can by going into settings, you can see how we've set this up, right? So job name, you can see like in the execution settings, so like what are the commands that we want to be run every time this job gets deployed. We have our docs being generated every time it runs, as well as, running for source freshness. So the section below is all about like triggers, right? So how do we want to schedule this job, right? So we have this running on like, a cron schedule. We have it running every single night at the same time. But there's also this like section called job completion. So we call this like job chaining, right? So if you wanted this job to be dependent on the like successful run of another job like upstream, this is where you would set this. So this really kind of like helps with that automation, right? If you want to do something very sequentially, right? This is how you would set up that. Awesome, and then we can kind of go into more of like the run details from a previous job. You can kind of see all the different information that you get, right? All the different steps that it takes in the deployment process from, cloning it in Git all the way to actually like invoking all the dbt commands. You can see the lineage of the job, right? So what are the different models that are being, kind of built and run? And here you can also get insights into, hey, like maybe a model is taking a very long time to actually run. And here we see like the forecast daily returns is taking quite a long time. So we can actually, dig a bit more into that. So like I said, going full circle, we can go back to our home page and then go to performance. We can again see like just general like project level like information, like which models are the like most executed. And then of course, which ones are taking the longest. And here you'll see that forecast daily one is by far taking the longest amount of time. So that's really good to kind of like look into and see if there's like anything you can like potentially optimize within your project. And then I did also want to highlight recommendations. So going into that recommendations tab, you can see, hey, like how many tests do we have, or how many models do we have that have tests, and how many models have documentation, right? If that's something that you're trying to like really achieve 100% on, like this is kind of where you would watch for that. And then it provides actual recommendations too, right? So if there's like a high severity of like, hey, you probably, want to add tests to these specific models, or, especially when it comes to like having like a primary key, and a unique test set for those primary keys. So yeah, that is kind of the general demo end to end, but I did also want to show you a semantic layer a little bit, right? And kind of show you how we set up semantic models and metrics in dbt Cloud. So we can go back to, the home page, or we can click into semantic models, right? And we'll go into orders. So again, the semantic layer really simplifies the process of defining and using critical business metrics, and eliminates like duplicate coding by allowing data teams to define metrics on top of existing models, and automatically handle those data joins. So here in dbt Explorer, we can actually get all the relevant information on our defined semantic models. So this one's called orders, and you'll find like the DAG that shows the relationship of the semantic model to other resources like models and metrics. You can also see the dimensions, so how we categorize and filter data, which makes it easier to organize. The measures, so that's how we calculate data to provide insights through aggregation. And then we can actually go into the IDE itself to see just how we've defined our semantic model. So this file contains different object types that make up the queries for metric definitions. And we can also look at the metrics YAML file, right, to kind of see how we're defining our individual metrics. And then, these metrics get used, downstream in those different dashboards and reporting tools. It'll be able to kind of like, be able to integrate the semantic layer metrics with those, right? Or you can export those metrics and import them directly into your downstream tools if the integration is like not available. So yeah, just wanted to kind of highlight that. Again, the semantic models and metrics do populate in your like broader project DAG, so you can kind of see again like what goes into specific, metrics, right? Or like what the impact of like an upstream change in a model, like what impact that would have downstream in your metrics, right? And in your reporting. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to cover. Thanks so much, everyone. Please like reach out if you have questions or if something was confusing, please ask. And I'm going to actually pass it back over to Leah to close us out. So thanks.
Hey, thanks so much, Sarah. That was fantastic. Alrighty, thanks everyone for joining us today. We've got some next steps here for you. So to get started with your own dbt Cloud trial, it's in the doc section of Goldcast. You get a link to a free dbt Cloud trial. You can also get a one-on-one dbt Cloud demo by clicking the orange Talk to an Expert button at the top right-hand corner of Goldcast. Meet with the dbt expert about your specific use case. And then also, I posted a survey in the chat a couple of minutes ago. Please take that survey and let us know your thoughts. We really want to make these virtual events as valuable as possible for y'all, so we really appreciate any feedback you have for us. Alrighty, thanks so much again, everyone. I hope you have the best day ever, and we'll see you later. Bye.